I don't usually talk about what happened that Christmas Eve, not because I've forgotten, I wish I could, but because people don't believe me. My parents brushed it off as holiday stress. The police claimed the security cameras showed nothing unusual. But I know what I saw. I know who or what walked past my childhood bedroom door that night. And I know the man in the Santa suit was never supposed to be in our house after he left. I hadn't been home in about 4 years. Life just kept piling up. Work deadlines, rent, exhaustion, everything except the time or energy to take a holiday trip. But this year, my mom insisted, her voice leaving no room for excuses. So I bought a ticket and flew back to Connecticut, to the quiet suburban street where I grew up. The house looked the same. The white siding, the warm yellow lights looped around the porch rail, the familiar smell of cinnamon, pine, and old wooden floors. Even the neighborhood hadn't changed. Every house glowed like a Christmas card, lights blinking in every direction. On Christmas Eve, my parents threw their usual neighborhood party. It was loud, crowded, chaotic, kids weaving between adults, adults showing off new sweaters, plates cracking under the weight of too many desserts. This year, they'd hired a Santa to hand out small gifts to the children. He was tall, much taller than most hired Santas, with broad shoulders filling the suit. His beard looked real, his voice deep, booming, too loud even. The kids adored him, climbing onto his lap, tugging his gloves, asking for toys their parents definitely couldn't afford. But something felt off. I couldn't explain it then, just a strange heaviness around him. He didn't mingle, didn't joke with the adults, didn't break character. He just watched. His eyes, barely visible under the thick eyebrow padding, scanned the room too slowly, almost like he was memorizing every face. Around 8:45 p.m., after he posed for pictures and handed out the presents, he waved, stepped outside, and disappeared down the front walkway. The party slowly died down after that, and by 10 p.m. the house was quiet again. My parents went to bed shortly after, exhausted. I wasn't tired, so I stayed up scrolling through my phone in my old bedroom, the one with faded wallpaper and posters from a life I barely remembered. The hall light was off, the house settling into deep old creaks the way it always did in winter. I was half asleep when I heard footsteps. Not random settling noises, actual heavy footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming down the hallway. I lifted my head, heart picking up speed. The door was cracked open, just enough to give me a thin line of view into the hallway. And through that gap, I saw it. A flash of red fabric, white fur trim, and a black glove swinging at someone's side. A Santa suit, walking past my door. My breath caught. My dad is short and nowhere near that size. My mom is tiny. Nobody else was supposed to be upstairs, and the hired Santa had left hours ago. I switched on the lamp and slipped out of bed, stepping into the hallway. It was empty. Every door was closed. The air was still and cold. I didn't hear another step. I stood there for a long minute, trying to convince myself that maybe I hallucinated it. Maybe the shadows played a trick on me. Maybe I was tired from travel. I finally went back to bed, but sleep never came fully. I kept listening for anything, any sign that I wasn't alone. At around 2 a.m., I heard something worse than footsteps. A dragging sound, slow, heavy, like someone pulling a weighted sack across the hardwood floor. My skin prickled with fear. The dragging sound grew louder, closer, scraping across the hallway. Then it stopped just outside my door. I could hear breathing, low, muffled, forced through fabric. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. The doorknob rattled softly, like someone testing it. I stumbled backwards so fast I almost fell. The handle twisted again, harder. Then came a slow, rhythmic knocking. Not angry, not rushed, but patient. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, ready to call for help. Then suddenly, everything stopped. Silence settled over the hallway again. But I couldn't bring myself to open the door. I stayed awake until dawn, every muscle locked, every sound magnified. In the morning, with the sun finally lighting the hallway, I forced myself to tell my parents. They laughed at first, thinking I was joking. Then they dismissed it as stress, jet lag, or an overactive imagination. But I insisted we check the security footage. We pulled up the cameras on the TV. The timestamp rolled steadily from midnight to morning. I watched every second. No Santa, no footsteps, no strange movement, just static images of the living room, the kitchen, the hallway. Except the Christmas tree skirt had moved, slightly, an inch or two. There was no pet, no draft, and I hadn't touched it. My dad said maybe someone bumped it during the party. Maybe it was never centered in the first place. I didn't argue, but I didn't believe him. That night, I tried to sleep again, but I woke up to see that the crack in my door, the small 2-inch gap I had purposely left, was wider, almost double. Someone had pushed it open while I slept. When I went to get my charger later, my suitcase was unzipped, clothes pulled out, items rearranged, not messily, carefully, neatly, like someone had sifted through them one by one. A memory hit me then, the dragging sound, the feeling that something was outside the room, the gloved hand on the doorknob, Santa's sack. My stomach twisted, but nothing compared to what happened at midnight on Christmas Day. I was half awake, staring at the ceiling when the footsteps started again, heavy, slow, coming down the hallway. No attempt at stealth this time. A bell jingled softly. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. The footsteps stopped directly in front of my door. Then a voice, low, rough, muffled through the beard. "Merry Christmas." It felt like ice water poured down my back. I launched myself at the door, slammed it shut, locked it, shoved my desk and dresser against it. The doorknob twisted violently, harder than before. Then came that same slow, playful knocking, like a cruel joke. I called 911, whispering, terrified he might hear my voice. By the time the police arrived, the sound had stopped. They searched the house thoroughly. Nothing. No footprints outside. No signs of forced entry. Nothing moved except a few faint impressions on the hallway carpet that the officer quietly admitted looked like someone had been standing there. That was enough. I decided to leave early. While packing, I went into my room one last time and stopped dead. A red velvet sack lay neatly on my bed. Not ours, not something from the party. I didn't want to open it, but I couldn't stop myself. Inside were items from my old room, a broken toy from when I was 6, an old composite notebook, a small plastic figure I used to keep on my shelf, things I hadn't touched in a decade. Someone had collected them. Someone had taken them from the room while I slept. At the bottom of the sack was a Polaroid. My heart nearly stopped when I saw it. It was a picture of me, asleep, in my bed, taken from inside the room. I left within the hour. That was 3 years ago. I live across the country now in a small apartment. I've changed my locks 6 times. I don't decorate for Christmas anymore. But every Christmas Eve, just after midnight, I hear a small jingle in the hallway outside my door, and every Christmas morning, there's a gift bag outside my apartment. Inside are little objects from my past, a missing ornament, a scrap of my childhood blanket, a book I lost years ago. Always something he took, always something returned like a keepsake. He knows where I live. He always did. And he's waiting, patiently, for the night I finally sleep long enough for him to open the door.
To keep watching videos like this, you need to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. Please leave a comment telling me where you're watching this video from. Now, back to the shadows. I wasn't supposed to be working Christmas Eve. I had swapped shifts with a coworker the week before, thinking it would give me a full 2 days to finally rest after a brutal month at the office. But plans fall apart, and there I was at 10:37 p.m., trudging through a practically deserted parking garage after locking up the tiny retail store where I worked. Lights buzzed overhead, flickering with that familiar electrical hum, and the sound echoed off the cold concrete walls like someone whispering a little too close to my ear. I remember rubbing my hands together, trying to warm them, when I saw him. At first, just a figure, a man standing at the far end of the lot, completely still, as if he'd been waiting for someone. He wore a long red coat, the kind Santa impersonators wear when they want to look classy instead of cheap. The coat shimmered slightly under the dim lights, almost velvety. Strange choice for a freezing, empty garage. At first, I didn't panic. Christmas brings all kinds of weirdos out. Maybe he was waiting for a cab or finishing a phone call. But his posture, that's what unsettled me. He stood facing me, head tilted down as if he was staring at the ground, yet somehow I felt his attention locked on me. I decided to ignore him and kept walking to my car. But when I pressed the button on my key fob, the soft chirp echoed through the garage, and that was the moment he moved. Not walked, not shuffled, he glided forward just a few steps, smooth and deliberate. Enough to be noticeable, enough to raise every hair on my arms. My heart thudded in my chest. I glanced back. He was still there, head still bowed slightly, hands at his sides. The only thing I could make out besides the coat was his beard, long, white, wiry. Not the fluffy commercial kind, more like strands of spider silk that hadn't been brushed in decades. "Can I help you?" I called, hating how shaky my voice sounded. He didn't respond. I got into my car fast and locked the doors. My breath fogged the windshield as I started the engine. Just as I began backing out, I saw him again, standing behind my car in the rear camera. Closer now, much closer. I gasped and twisted around, but when I looked through the rear windshield, he was gone, completely. The camera, however, still showed him standing there. A glitch, I told myself. Cheap car tech, happens all the time. But when I shifted to drive, he appeared on the camera again, this time at my left side, then my right, flickering between angles. Each time he reappeared, he was closer. I remember my breathing speeding up, my hands trembling on the wheel. I didn't want to look at the camera anymore, but I couldn't stop myself. Then the screen went black. I floored the accelerator and tore out of the parking garage so fast the tires screeched. 30 minutes later, I reached my apartment and convinced myself the entire thing was stress-induced paranoia, holiday exhaustion, overthinking. I locked the door behind me, made tea, and promised myself I'd get a full 8 hours of sleep. Around 2 a.m., I was half asleep when I heard what I thought was someone dragging their hand across my front door, slow, deliberate, as if feeling the pattern of the wood. I sat up in bed, listening, stomach dropping. I told myself it was just the building settling. Old apartments make noises when it's cold. Then came the knock. 4 taps. Soft, even. I froze. Another knock. I reached for my phone, ready to call the police, but curiosity got the better of me. I crept to the peephole and looked out. No one was there. I leaned back, heart pounding. when something brushed across the door again, lower this time, like fingertips trailing gently. I forced myself away from the door, climbed back into bed fully clothed, and stayed awake until almost dawn. The next morning, Christmas Day, I tried telling myself it had been some drunk neighbor or prank. I avoided the door until noon when I finally opened it to double check. And there, on my welcome mat, was a single object, a long, thin strip of red velvet fabric. I dropped it instantly and slammed the door shut. The man from the garage. It had to be, but I didn't know how he found my building, let alone my specific apartment. That evening, my phone started ringing, an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again, and again, and again. Finally, it stopped, and a voicemail notification popped up. Against my better judgment, I listened. Static. Just static at first. Then, underneath it, faint but unmistakable, the sound of bells jingling, the kind Santa Claus costumes have. Then, a voice, soft and gravelly, whispered, "Have you been good?" I nearly dropped the phone. I blocked the number immediately, but new ones began calling, different area codes, every few minutes. I turned my phone off, threw it into a drawer, and sat in the living room with all the lights on. Around midnight, the power went out. My apartment fell into total blackness. I stayed frozen on the couch, terrified to move. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, coming from somewhere deep in the apartment, maybe the hallway, maybe the kitchen, I heard the soft scrape of something dragging across the floor. Slow, measured, coming closer. My throat tightened as panic swallowed me whole. I grabbed a flashlight from the coffee table, clicked it on, and shone it toward the hallway. No one. But then, I heard breathing. Not mine. Heavy, wet, like something struggling to inhale. The breathing grew louder, closer. I raised the flashlight again, and that's when I saw him. The man in the red coat was standing just at the edge of the hallway, half hidden in shadow. His head was still bowed, beard hanging like frayed threads, coat shimmering slightly even in the dim beam of my flashlight. I couldn't see his eyes. I didn't want to. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, with a horrible cracking sound, he lifted his head. His eyes were completely black. No pupils, no whites, just endless pits. I screamed and ran from my bedroom, slamming the door behind me. I pushed my dresser in front of it, grabbed my phone again, even though it was off, and turned it on. Dozens of missed calls loaded in instantly, but no time for that. I called 911, voice trembling so violently I could barely get the words out. While I talked to the dispatcher, something pushed on the bedroom door. Slow at first, then harder. The wood groaned, the dresser scraped across the floor. "Please hurry," I begged into the phone. "He's in my apartment! He's trying to get in, please!" The dispatcher kept talking, but I barely heard her. The door frame cracked. A low chuckle, raspy and distorted, seeped through the cracks. Then, everything went quiet. The police arrived in 8 minutes. When they broke the bedroom door open, I was on the floor, sobbing. The apartment was empty. The front door was still locked from the inside. The officers did a full sweep, checked security cameras, looked for signs of forced entry. Nothing. It was as if no one else had ever been there at all. But before they left, one officer stopped and picked something off the floor near my fireplace. Another strip of red velvet. Only this one wasn't cut or torn. It was shaped like a small bow, as if from a neatly wrapped Christmas gift. Something deep inside me knew, this isn't over.
There's a Christmas tree farm about 15 minutes outside my hometown of Boone, North Carolina. Family-owned, picturesque, the kind of place people drive hours to visit for the authentic experience. I'd gone there every winter since I was a kid, but nothing, not a single memory, prepared me for what happened last December. I had just gotten back home for winter break. The semester had drained the life out of me, and the thought of warm coffee, pine trees, and a little mountain air felt like exactly what I needed. My mom suggested we go pick out a Christmas tree together like we used to. I hadn't done that in years. College, work, life. So I agreed. She was thrilled. I didn't know then that it would be the last simple moment either of us would experience for a long time. We drove up to the farm around 5 p.m. The sun was already sinking behind the mountains, casting long blue shadows across the endless rows of evergreens. The place was crowded earlier in the day, but by the time we arrived, most visitors had left. Only a few cars dotted the parking area. The air was cold enough that you could see every breath you took. A man named Ronald, the son of the farm owner, waved to us from the front kiosk. I remembered him vaguely from childhood visits. Tall guy, quiet voice, strange habit of staring a little too long before he spoke. He recognized my mother instantly, but didn't seem to recognize me at all. His eyes lingered on me for a moment before he smiled, too wide, too stiff. "Got some good ones deeper in the back rows," he said. "Real special this year." Mom laughed politely. I didn't. Something about the way he said special made my stomach twist. We grabbed a handsaw from the stand and started walking through the trees. They were beautiful, thick branches, perfect shape, the scent of fresh pine hanging heavy in the air. My mom walked ahead of me, humming quietly. That's when I heard it. Whispering. At first, it sounded like wind moving through the branches, but the trees weren't swaying. The air was still. The whispering came again, a soft, hissing murmur, words I couldn't understand, too low, too fast, but definitely words. "Mom," I called gently, "do you hear that?" She paused mid-step. "Hear what?" I listened again. Nothing, just the crunch of snow under our boots and the distant hum of the farm's generator. "Nothing," I said. "Thought I heard something." We kept walking. About 10 minutes in, we found the perfect tree. Tall, full, dark green. My mom beamed like she had found buried treasure. "This one," she said. I knelt down to start sawing, but just as I placed my hand on the trunk, something cold brushed my wrist. I jerked back. "What's wrong?" Mom asked. It felt like something touched me." She frowned and crouched down beside me. "Probably just a low branch." I nodded, embarrassed, and started sawing. The light was fading fast now. The sky had turned deep purple, and long shadows stretched between the rows of trees. As the saw bit through the trunk, a strange smell wafted up, sweet but rotten, like fruit left in a closed container for too long. I gagged. "What is that?" Mom sniffed the air. "I don't smell anything." But I did. It clung to the tree, seeping from the bark like invisible mist. The whispering returned, louder this time, still muddled but urgent. "Get up."
Leave. Don't cut it. The words weren't clear, but the feeling they carried was panic, warning. A wave of dizziness washed over me, and I let go of the saw, bracing myself. "Are you okay?" Mom asked, putting a hand on my shoulder. "Yeah," I lied, "just tired." We bundled the tree and dragged it toward the main path. The sky was almost black now. A pale sliver of moon peeked through the clouds. The farm was quiet, too quiet for a holiday evening. No laughter, no voices, no rustling from workers cleaning up. Nothing. Then, ahead of us, a shape moved between the trees. I froze. At first, I thought it was a person, but the figure was wrong. Too tall, too thin, its limbs impossibly long. It slipped between the rows with unnatural ease. My breath caught in my throat. "Mom," I whispered,
Do you see that? She followed my gaze, her eyes widened. Let's just keep walking. The figure moved again, closer this time, a silhouette against the dim moonlight, its head tilted, as though watching us. The whispering swelled, no longer soft, now a hiss surrounding us from all directions. Turn back, turn back, turn back. We didn't listen. We should have. We hurried toward the front of the farm, tree dragging behind us. My heart pounded against my ribs, each beat louder than the last. The figure slipped behind another row, closer still. "Mom, hurry!" I begged. She picked up her pace, her breathing sharp and uneven. The kiosk came into view, but the lights were off. Every light on the property was off. Then we saw Ronald, standing perfectly still, next to the baler machine, facing us. His head was tilted too, just like the figure between the trees. A wide, unnatural grin spread across his face as we got closer. "Beautiful tree," he said, voice flat and hollow. "You picked a special one." The whispering went silent instantly. I swallowed hard. We need to go." His grin widened, stretching unnaturally far. "The tree chose you." Mom grabbed my arm. "We're leaving." We dragged the tree past him, but just as we reached the parking lot, something grabbed the trunk from behind, hard, violently. The tree yanked backward, nearly pulling me off my feet. I screamed and spun around. No one was there, but the tree was dragging itself back toward the field, branches curled like fingers clawing into the snow. Mom shouted my name. I grabbed her hand and ran, abandoning the tree entirely. Whatever it was could keep it. We sprinted to the car, jumping inside just as something large moved in the shadows behind us. I locked the doors. Mom fumbled with the keys. Her hands were trembling so badly she dropped them. Come on, I whispered. A long, scraping sound drifted across the parking lot, like claws dragging across bark. The engine finally roared to life, and we sped away, gravel flying behind the wheels. When I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw it, just for a moment, a tall figure standing beside our abandoned tree, branches wrapped around its arms like living vines, black eyes staring after us. We didn't stop driving until we were back in town. My mom never went back to that tree farm, neither did I. But the story didn't end there. 2 days before Christmas, I heard whispering again. In my bedroom. I shot upright, heart hammering. The room was dark, but the whispering was clear. You left it. It didn't want to stay. It's coming. I reached for my lamp, but froze when something thumped outside my window. Soft, heavy, deliberate. Branches brushed against the glass, slowly, purposefully. I backed away from the window, shaking violently. The whispering dropped to a low hum. Then, from the other side of the glass, something whispered back. Not warning me this time, calling my name. I didn't sleep for the rest of December. The farm shut down permanently in January. No explanation. The owners vanished. No forwarding address. The land is still empty now. Locals avoid it. Some say it's cursed. Others say the trees weren't actually trees. But here's the truth. The thing in the field knew me, and it wanted something. It still does. Last night, for the first time in months, I woke up to the sound of whispering again. Low, urgent, coming from the backyard. When I looked outside, I saw a fresh pine tree standing upright near the fence, one that wasn't there the day before. And its branches, they were moving, reaching toward my window.
To keep watching videos like this, you need to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. Please leave a comment telling me where you're watching this video from. Now, back to the shadows. I was not moving. I hadn't moved in exactly 6 minutes. I was crouched in the crawl space beneath the kitchen island, my knees pressing into the cold, grit-dusted linoleum. The air in there tasted like stale pine and old copper. My breathing was the primary problem. Every time I inhaled, the dry winter air rattled in my throat, a sound that felt like a siren in the absolute silence of the mountain. I had my palm pressed firmly over my mouth, trying to muffle the hitch in my chest. Just inches away, on the other side of the thin wooden cabinet door, I heard it. The slow, rhythmic scrape of a heavy boot against the floorboards. I closed my eyes, praying that the darkness behind my eyelids could somehow make me invisible. I had taken that sublet to save my career. As a freelance architect, my life was governed by deadlines and structural integrity, and I was losing my grip on both in the city. I needed the silence of the Cascades to finish the blueprints for the Sterling high-rise project. The cabin was supposed to be my sanctuary, a rustic one-bedroom loft with cedar plank walls and a view of the jagged snow-capped peaks. I had settled into a rigid adult routine. Wake at 6, brew a pot of bitter black coffee, and work until the sun dipped below the tree line. The cabin was saturated with the scent of drying pine needles from the towering Christmas tree in the corner, a smell so thick it felt like it was coating the back of my throat. The atmosphere was heavy with mundane sounds that I'd spent the first 3 days cataloging: the rhythmic, wet thunk of snow sliding off the roof, the frantic hum of the electric wall heaters, and the way the flickering fluorescent light over the drafting table hummed in a low B-flat. The wallpaper in the kitchen was peeling at the corners, revealing layers of floral patterns from a decade I wasn't even alive for. The floorboards in the hallway had a specific high-pitched creak when I stepped too close to the bathroom door. It was a predictable environment. It was safe. It was exactly what I thought I needed to maintain my grip on reality. The first crack in my logic appeared at 8 p.m. on Christmas Eve. I had stepped away from my laptop to refill my mug when a glint of silver caught the light from beneath the tree. Nestled among the empty decorative boxes the landlord had left for atmosphere was a small package wrapped in plain brown paper. My heart gave a sudden sharp thud against my ribs. I hadn't put it there. I knelt, my joints popping in the quiet room, and picked it up. The tag was addressed to me, written in a cramped, familiar script, my own handwriting. Inside was a silver locket I had lost over a decade ago during a move in Chicago. I felt the blood drain from my face, a cold wash of prickling skin spreading down my arms. I spent the next hour pacing the kitchen, feverishly rationalizing the event. Maybe I had packed it in a box of drafting supplies and forgotten. Maybe the landlord had found it in the floorboards from a previous tenant, and by some astronomical coincidence, it looked exactly like mine. I tried to convince myself it was a festive prank, a welcome gift from a landlord who had searched my name online and found a photo of me wearing it. I had to believe that. The alternative, that the boundary of my private life had been breached, was a thought I couldn't afford to seat at the table. By midnight, the echo of that locket had transformed into a physical pressure in the room. I found myself checking the heavy oak front door every 10 minutes, my fingers tracing the cold metal of the deadbolt. My internal monologue became a frantic loop of what-ifs. What if I didn't lock the cellar door after checking the heater? What if that shadow by the coat rack wasn't just my parka? I tried to call my sister just to hear a sane voice, but the mountain pass had claimed the signal. My phone sat on the table, a useless slab of glass and plastic. I felt a profound sense of isolation, as if the cabin had been lifted off the earth and placed in a void. Every groan of the timber felt like a footstep. Every shift in the wind sounded like a whispered conversation just outside the glass. I began to wonder if the silence of the mountains wasn't a sanctuary, but a cage designed to muffle my voice. I remembered a time in college when I thought I was being followed in a parking garage. That same icy finger of dread was tracing my spine now, reminding me that being alone is only peaceful when you're certain you truly are alone. To ground myself, I opened my laptop to review the day's sketches. As the webcam initialized, the screen showed my own tired reflection. But then, my breath hitched. In the background of the video feed, I saw the reflection of a large silver Christmas ornament hanging on the tree behind me. In that curved metallic surface, I saw the doorway to the darkened hallway. Standing there was a figure. It was wearing my exact gray wool sweater. It had my hair tied in the same messy bun I'd been wearing for 2 days. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I watched the screen with a focused, agonizing intensity. Slowly, I raised my right hand to my throat. On the screen, the figure in the reflection stayed perfectly still. It waited. 1, 2, 3. Then, with a jerky, mechanical precision that made my stomach turn, it raised its right hand to its throat. It was a delay. It was a mimicry failing to keep pace with the real world. My fight or flight response kicked in like a physical blow to the chest. My skin went hot, then instantly cold. My vision narrowed into a sharp tunnel, and a high-pitched ringing began to wail in my ears. This was the proof I could no longer explain away. The power flickered once, a dying gasp from the electric heaters, and then the cabin was plunged into a sensory blackout. I bolted from the chair, the legs skidding across the floor with a screech that sounded like a scream. I didn't head for the door. I could hear the figure moving toward it from the hall. I scrambled into the kitchen, my hands sweeping across the counters, knocking over my coffee mug. I heard the ceramic shatter, but I didn't stop. I dove into the crawl space under the island, pulling the cabinet door shut just as the heavy thump drag of footsteps entered the room. Through the slats, I watched a pair of boots that looked exactly like mine, stop inches from my hiding spot. The figure began to call my name. "Elena?" it whispered. The voice was an exact match for mine, but it was flat, devoid of the tremor of fear that was currently tearing me apart. It moved to the pantry, then the mudroom, its movements echoing my own architectural layout of the house. I realized it wasn't just following me, it was inhabiting me. Every time it moved, I felt a phantom weight in my own limbs, as if my body was trying to sync with the thing in the dark. I waited in that dark, cramped space until the first gray light of dawn filtered through the kitchen window. When the sun finally rose, the cabin was empty. The figure was gone. The locket was gone. I didn't wait to pack my blueprints or my clothes. I ran to my car, my lungs burning in the freezing air, and drove until the mountains were nothing but a jagged line on the horizon. I survived through pure adrenaline-fueled wit, but the relief I felt when I reached the city was hollow. My psyche has been permanently altered. Now, back in my apartment, I can't look at a mirror. I keep the curtains drawn and the lights dimmed, because every time I move, every time I reach for a glass or turn a page, I find myself counting to 3. I am terrified that one day I will look at my reflection and see it standing still, watching me with a 3-second delay, waiting for the moment I finally stop looking back. I was perfectly still, pressed against the cold metal of a locker in the employee break room. The only sound was the jagged, uneven rhythm of my own breathing, which felt dangerously loud in the cavernous silence of the warehouse. I held my breath until my lungs burned, straining to hear the footsteps I knew were pacing just outside the door. There was a soft, rhythmic clack, clack, clack. The sound of a heavy industrial stapler being squeezed and released over and over. I squeezed my eyes shut, my heart hammering against my ribs with a force that felt like it would bruise. I was a 40-year-old logistics manager, a man who dealt in spreadsheets and shipping manifests. Yet here I was, hiding in the dark like a cornered animal. I had stayed late on Christmas Eve to supervise the final lockdown of the regional distribution center. It was a massive 200,000 square foot concrete box filled with rows of towering steel racking that reached toward the shadows of the ceiling. My routine was mundane and familiar, checking the bay doors, arming the perimeter alarms, and ensuring the conveyor system was powered down for the holiday. The warehouse had a specific, lonely atmosphere at night. The air was chilled and tasted of filtered dust and machine oil. The silence was never truly absolute. It was filled with the low electrical hum of the transformer vats and the occasional distant pop of the metal roof contracting in the winter cold. A single row of flickering fluorescent lights remained on in the center aisle, casting long, twitching shadows that danced between the pallets of shrink-wrapped electronics and home goods. I had my lukewarm coffee in a stained travel mug, the smell of burnt beans the only comfort in the hollow space. I was alone, exactly as I should have been on a night when the world was home with their families. The first sign that something was wrong was small, a break in the architectural logic of the floor. As I walked past row 4, a motion-detected light flickered to life at the far end of the aisle. I stopped, my boots echoing once before the silence swallowed the sound. I checked my tablet. The system showed no active employees logged into the building. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding thin and fragile in the vast space. No one answered. I walked toward the light, telling myself it was just a glitch in the sensors, perhaps triggered by a draft or a stray moth. But when I reached the end of the aisle, I found a single roll of heavy-duty packing tape sitting in the middle of the floor. It hadn't been there 10 minutes ago. I picked it up, the plastic core still warm, as if it had just been held. I spent several minutes rationalizing it. Maybe a night shift worker had dropped it and I'd simply missed it on my first pass. I was a manager. I dealt in facts, and the fact was, I was tired and seeing ghosts in the machinery. As I headed back to my glass-walled office to grab my keys, the dread began to spiral. I felt the distinct prickly sensation of eyes on the back of my neck. I began the what-if loop in my head. What if I didn't lock the side pedestrian door? What if someone had slipped in while the last delivery truck was departing? I reached for my desk phone to call the security gate, but the line was dead. Just a hollow, empty hiss. My cell phone, which had been at 40%, suddenly blacked out, the battery drained by the cold or something I couldn't explain. I was isolated in a maze of steel and cardboard. I looked out through my office window at the dark warehouse floor and saw a shape move behind a pallet of televisions. It wasn't a shadow, it was a person-sized silhouette moving with a predatory slowness that made my pulse spike. I decided to leave immediately, but when I reached the heavy steel door of my office, I stopped. Stuck to the glass, at eye level, was a freshly printed shipping label. My blood turned to ice as I read the text. The recipient field contained my full name and my home address. The weight field read exactly 195 pounds, my exact weight for my last physical. But it was the contents description that caused a physical reaction. It simply read, perishable. A sudden wash of adrenaline hit me, leaving a metallic taste in my mouth and a sharp ringing in my ears. I wasn't just being watched, I was being inventoried. The warehouse lights suddenly cut out, leaving only the dim red glow of the exit signs. I bolted from the office, my sneakers squeaking on the polished concrete. I didn't run for the front. I knew the figure was there. I ducked into the maze of row 12, sliding between the heavy racking. I heard him behind me. The clack, clack, clack of the stapler was closer now. I ducked behind a stack of industrial crates, my heart hammering so hard I feared he could hear it. I saw him pass, a man in a dark jumpsuit, his movements stiff and deliberate. He stopped just 3 feet from where I crouched, sniffing the air like a hound. I moved with agonizing slowness, crawling under a flatbed cart as he turned toward my hiding spot. It was a desperate game of hide and seek in the dark, my breath held until my vision blurred. When he moved toward the loading docks, I made a break for the emergency stairwell, my feet barely touching the ground as I felt his presence lunging just behind me in the shadows. I burst through the emergency exit, the alarm wailing behind me, and didn't stop running until I reached my car. I locked the doors, my hands shaking so violently I could barely fit the key into the ignition. I drove straight to the police station, but when they returned to the warehouse, the building was secure. No broken windows, no forced locks, and no sign of the man in the jumpsuit. I survived, but the relief was a lie. 2 weeks later, a package arrived at my front door. It was a standard brown shipping box, taped shut with the same heavy-duty packing tape I had found on the floor. There was no return address. Inside, I found my office keys and a single heavy industrial staple. I changed my locks and moved to a different state, but I still can't stand the sound of a tape dispenser. Every time I hear that sharp, tearing plastic sound, I look at the floor, terrified I'll see a label with my name on it, waiting to be shipped.
We made it out of this one, but the darkness runs deep. If you think you can handle it, check out the other cases on the channel. Don't risk losing the signal. Like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. The next investigation is starting now.